James, welcome to India today.
Thank you.
Super excited to have you. I quickly want to speak to you while growing up, or perhaps when you were a teenager. When was the first time you collided with the word India? What has been your earliest memory? Was it in school? Was it during with friends? What was it?
Actually, we had Indian neighbours when I was a teenager living across the road. I'm still very good mates with him. So he actually had an Indian father, and his mother was English. So, but we're talking about the 70s. So there were a few Indian kids at my school, but not millions. So Indians were still slightly exotic to us in northern industrial Britain, where life was sort of conservative in many ways. It wasn't particularly multicultural back then. So I suppose my earliest Indian sort of experience was in England, having Indian food or Indian inspired food at my mate's house over the road, because his mother had learned everything about Indian cooking from her husband.
Do you remember the dish?
No, well, I remember it, but it was often things. It was often sort of hybrid things. So it would be something quite old-fashioned and British, but with more spices and flavors in it, because they had an amazing pantry. It was a very old-fashioned house they had, and it had a walk-in pantry, but it had proper spices in it. So it had a spice,
Right.
What do you call it? A spice dabba, the little tray thing. And I remember used to go in there and sort of put my head in and think, that's quite an exciting smell, and it doesn't smell like the similar pantry in our house. Our house was of a similar age. So it was little things like that, I suppose. That was long before I ever went to India. I didn't go to India until the 90s, 20 odd years later.
You used a very interesting word, which is very commonly used for India, which is exotic. It has almost sort of become a cliche every time we bump into a Westerner, or if we have to meet somebody who's from the other part of the globe. That's a word that often comes up, right? Now,
Yes.
Going back home, or perhaps if you had to share a drink with somebody who has never been to India, who has never perhaps even heard. There are people in the world who've never heard of a country called India. There could be perhaps. How would you summarize, and what word would you use to describe India?
If I have to choose one word, okay, but not exotic. You're right that we do tend to think of India as exotic in Britain, because it's sort of, it's very colourful. It's sensory. Actually, sensory is probably a good word to describe India if you're an outsider, because there's a lot happening, a lot of. But I'm talking about everyday things like smells, sights, colors, noise, dust, a little bit of chaos, busyness, all these things. I think that's probably what it's about. I know India, certainly the cities of India, so places like Mumbai especially, which is just incredibly busy. I think a lot of Europeans and a lot of British people do struggle a bit, because they find it a bit intense at first. I've got some Indian friends in Britain, one of whom actually didn't grow up in India. She actually grew up in Kenya, but her family's Indian, and then they moved to England with her father's job. So back in the 60s, early 70s, but she'd never actually been to India until about 10 years ago. So I'd been to India before her, and she was saying, "What's it like?" And I said, "Well, you're Indian, your family must have told you." And she said, "Well, no, but I don't really know." And the first time she went, I think she flew into Kolkata first. And she told me when she got back that, to begin with, she was slightly scared of it, because she didn't realize just how incredibly busy and how packed some of those Indian cities are.
Right. And we can't not speak about India and not mention is the movies. That's such a part of our culture, Bollywood, or now Indian films, as they're called across the globe. Are we going to see a bit of that in Our Man in India? Have you got that experience? Did you get to do a bit of song and dance?
I didn't get, no, we did think about trying to do a Bollywood dance routine, but to be honest, it's very complicated and very expensive, and it would take they spend a long time on those big dance routines, and we wouldn't have done it justice. I don't think it would have come across as looking a bit corny, and I can't dance anyway, or sing for that matter. But we did do a little bit of, we went to see some poster art being done. So the first time I went to India in the 90s, you were still doing a lot of hand painted, not just posters, but also adverts and sign writing. And it seems to have largely disappeared now, and it's been replaced by printing like it has everywhere else. But we did manage to go and see one of the surviving very old poster painters. In fact, I got a poster off him, an original to keep of Nish Kumar. And that was a bit of Bollywood that we looked at, and then later we did Tollywood. So they gave me a part in the biopic they were doing. I had to play William Hastie. I had to play a Scottish theologian living in India, which is ridiculous because I'm English and I'm not a theologian, and I actually live in London. But we had and I think they were reasonably pleased with it because they've left me in. I am in that series somewhere on TV in India, so I'm quite pleased about that. I hope people stumble across it and think, "What the hell is James? Why has James appeared in the middle of this?" You know, it's got nothing to do with anything else I've ever done in my life, but it's very nice to be asked. I'm surprised they did it, really, but
it could just be the start of something new. We never know, James. But I quickly want to get a one-word reaction from you from the following. If I had to ask you the standout things that stood out for you in India, the one color that stood out for you, if you had to describe.
Oh, I think it's a color that's a little bit like ground turmeric, so it's sort of yellow but slightly green at the same time.
Okay,
that is an exotic color. I would use the word exotic for that. So that's
one sound.
Car horns.
Okay.
Tuk-tuk horns.
Okay. One word that you often had falling on your ears or you picked up on.
Oh, right. So the one word is, we always learn the word for sorry, and I've just forgotten it.
Maaf karo. Maaf karo.
Yes.
Mujhe maaf karo.
Yes. So we use that a lot. Wherever we go, we always learn the word for sorry first because we find that we have to say it quite often. So I think that's my standout word.
Okay.
And biryani. Biryani is the.
Okay. Yeah, you can't not have biryani.
Yes, a lot of biryani.
Absolutely. If you had to describe India as a movie, what title would you choose?
India as a movie, so I can make up a name.
You could either make up or you could choose one from any of the movies that you've seen, perhaps, or we've seen.
Okay. Well, I'll choose Monsoon Wedding because that's the Bollywood film I've seen the most, and it's a great story and it looks very nice, and it's also got great music in it, and it's got some great expressions in it that we've adopted amongst my friends, like "bloody number one most stupid duffer," which is what the father says when he's arguing with the groom. So yeah, I think that's a pretty Indian film if you watch that as an outsider. I mean, is it?
It is.
Is it?
It is. I mean, it has all the visuals and the sounds and the colors and the flavors of what India would encompass. I think we watched Italy, we watched Japan. I think what an exciting adventure that was for anybody, just not in India, but everybody around the globe. We are so looking forward to our man in India. And when we say our man, I'm almost extending that hospitality to you, James, and congratulating you on this.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope that do a lot of people watch Amazon in India? We were just discussing that and we're not sure.
Yes, it has a huge following, and you have a huge following as well. You would be surprised. People are making itineraries around around the stuff that you have shown us. They're planning to visit places, go to cafes, do the things that we've seen you do. So that's very interesting.
Oh, right. Well, that's nice. Thank you very much.
See you soon in India, perhaps next time.
I'll definitely be back. Yes, don't worry. I'll see you there.